Story 1. My grandma the Soul Sucker. Grandma was a demon, a fire and brimstone demon. And that soul sucker waited until her dying breath to sign over her dirty work to me. I spread the picnic blanket out in front of the grave. Elizabeth Capricorn, our arse-kicking angel. December 7th, 1986. October 1st, 2003, someone I and the street nearby shouted. The sound jumped the wall, and I nearly knocked over the glass vial delicately balanced in front of me. I snatched it upright. I was not getting blood on this blanket, a guy, and not even this time. The last time, now. When Grandma was alive, I loved her. I'd been awarded the honor of the task before me thanks to being the favorite grandchild. But I've had a long time since she died for my feelings too. Let's say DK. 86. She was 86 and, in my mind, still kicking it. I'd honestly thought she'd go on forever worrying about opening tins with arthritic hands and cursing subtitled TV. I never imagined she was. Well, it's unspeakable, really. Azariah, I'm not long for this world, she'd wheeze after I said she was looking little peaky. You mean because you're old, Grandma? No, Azariah, I'm going to die today. She said it like she was telling me the bingo hall was she-age. But, of course, I protested. How could she possibly know? Was she in danger? Should I take her to hospital? Should we at least turn off bargain hunt? To be fair, she tried to give me a heads up to what I was about to witness. 30 seconds is better than nothing. Azariah, she said firmly, in a minute my eyes will be on fire. I'm not mad and you're not hallucinating. Understand? I was already halfway to calling an ambulance when, pop, her irises ignited. I screamed, leapt up. She rolled her eyes. She did have a tendency for impatience, and set the door on fire, preventing my exit. Just stay where you are, she said, now with a demon surround sound echo. Realizing this was alarming, she coughed, grasped her throat, and in an equally alarming squeak, said, "Sorry, can't do anything about the voice. It's a demon thing, but really, don't worry." Worrying was 10 stops back. The next station was terror, but I shouldn't have fear. Had imminent death, just long, slow obligation, and a whole bunch of other nonsense beyond my imagining. Asterisk. At the grave, I properly arranged my implements, vial of blood, paintbrush, an embroidered handkerchief that says "Sorry you die," a lighter, a small scrap of folded paper. The hardest thing about this whole shebang is that I can't just say sorry. I have to mean it. The underworld doesn't accept half-hearted remorse. It took me too many failed attempts to get to grips with that one. And when I realized what the secret was, I was even more pissed off with her. But it's the last time, the final time after this, I'll be free. So I sat and considered Elizabeth Capricorn, the arse-kicking angel, and sought the last shred of sympathy I had within my heart. Asterisk. Grandma, if you are a demon, why did you have to tell me? I wailed. She sat down, bit into a Garibaldi, and held the plate out. Biscuit? No, I cry. For God's sake, Grandma. Or maybe Satan's sake. Or she looked like she was about to offer some clarification. I don't want to know. Can you not just wipe out my memory? Doesn't work like that. sweet. People die with terrible secrets all the time. Grandma, why couldn't you be one of them? I thought back to my most treasured memories of Grandma. She taught me how to tell the difference between the call of a blue tit and great tit. She taught me how to macrame. She rationed me out just one bowl, sweet per visit. And what a thrill it was trying to last as long as I could each visit without asking for it. Because I need your help, Azariah. I'm not signing my soul away in blood. Grandma spoke too soon. There, didn't I? Well, although I am not after your soul, she began. It is nevertheless true. I do. Her eyes for a moment burned brighter. Can't dance a rule, and I eat them, she said. Alas, there is no other way for me. Every lunar month I acquire a soul which will keep me ticking over until the next one. And ... you've run out of souls. No, said Grandma, reaching for the remote to turn off bargain hunt. Just as the red team claimed victory with a profit of £45.20. I've run out of road, my girl, too tired to do it again. And today, as the first day of the month, I'll get you a soul. Grandma, just tell me how to do it. It doesn't have to be the end yet. I wasn't thinking, but who wouldn't offer to harvest a soul for their grandma? She surveyed the mounted plates on the wall and sighed. Azariah, it's more brutal than you know. First to travel. One should not turn one's friends and neighbors and hollow meat sacks, and since they think I'm too old to drive, I'm reliant on the indignities of Southern rail. Then if you ever arrive, there's the overpowering, she mimed, grasping someone by the lapels and leaning in, before one must, well, suck the soul from the body. I stared at her aghast. I do pop in a breath mint, she said, reaching at a hand of reassurance. I had no words. All that is to say that in that department you cannot help me. But once I am gone, I need your assistance in the area of reparations for the souls that I took, and those people. I hesitated. They fully die. Oh yes, she said, nodding gravely. But I left them to be found, never left a family wondering. She spoke with an air of professional pride. I started multiplying the months in my head. It took me a minute. Grandma, you killed over 1,000 people. She furrowed her brow, and without an act of penance for each, they shall never be at rest, and it will be an eternity of pain for me. I felt the fire in me cutting in. Don't you deserve to burn? And my descendants, of course. Barely a pause before she moved on. You have the required empathy, Azariah, the creativity, the logistical conscientiousness. A thought struck me. Does Mum know? She shook her head, and I wouldn't dream of asking her either. She'd only half-arsed the thing. So she doesn't. I couldn't say it. I'm leaning forward, grabbing the lapels. Oh no, she waved a hand. It's a recessive gene. Asterisk. Oh, how many times between then and the night at the final graveside had I concluded that I'd rather face an eternity of pain and death than do this sorry ritual again and again in life. Grandma left me a handwritten ritual and a list of every soul she'd sucked. Naturally, she hadn't digitized it, preferring to keep her eternal fate at the mercy of flood, fire, or burglary. This will be all you need, she promised, pressing it into my hands. It wasn't I needed names and memorial sites. She had names, at least, but her locations useless. Julian Plowman, in a copse in that bit of Giggleswick where the hills look like bums. Matilda Greenshields, in that labie in Fingren, go with the awful hot dog van. Clearly, she'd misread the ritual, burial place, grandma, not scene of the crime. But I couldn't exactly pop down to wherever she was now and ask for a second draft. You know, those people who trace back their family generations to find out where their great dash great dash great dash great dash great dash great dash great grandpa shone shoes for a living. Yeah. That's not me. I couldn't have located someone's final resting place if it was directly under my floorboards. So, like a person begging to do a stretch at His Majesty's pleasure, once I got over the initial horror, I started researching 1,000 suspicious and explained deaths. Pray my internet service provider didn't have a direct line to the police or the underworld. Graveside again with Elizabeth Capricorn. I didn't know anything about her beyond the fact that her family maintained a burial plot half a country away from anywhere she actually lived. She'd been an absolute pain to find, and because the ritual has to be done out of sight, it's 3 in the morning and absolutely freezing. I felt the energy slipping as I moved away from sympathy and into annoyance. Come on, Azariah, try harder. The girl didn't even make it to 17. She probably had big dreams, big plans, the whole future rolling out ahead of her. I pictured all those possibilities severed cleanly so I and mine could keep breathing. A heaviness settled in my chest. Before it could fade, I dipped the paintbrush into the blood. My own, obviously, I can draw blood better than a ward sister at this point. Practice makes perfect. I traced over her death date with it. An illuminated circle flared up around me, brass nodding and twisting around itself in agitation. Then the embroidered handkerchief and the lighter, one corner lit, flame staking properly before I set it down at the headstone. The ritual just said a burnt offering of your creation. Lessons learned. Avoid anything plastic. Always bring a spare lighter. And never underestimate how wet midnight grass gets. The handkerchief went up in smoke. The ground started to rumble, and the gravestone began to sink into the earth. The last stage of the ritual required a personal incantation of repentance. I'd learned the hard way that 2 lines equals not enough remorse. Prose equals 0 emotional credit, and generic chant equals an automatic fail. The dead, like strict English teachers, insisted on original work. The ritual has collapsed at THI's point in the past. I'd say there's no burn worse than creative rejection, but that would be a lie. I'd seen a worse fire incinerating Grandma's periwinkle blues from the inside. I picked up the paper, hands shaking from the cold, and the fear that Elizabeth Capricorn would hate what I'd written. I had so little to go on. Elizabeth, I stand here at your grave, and eke the words she left, but could not say I'm sorry for the lives she had to take, and hope your soul can rest another way. I held still, eyes fixed on the black hole into which the gravestone disappeared. The last one. It was the last one. Come on, Elizabeth. After what seemed like forever, 5 translucent fingers stretched their way out of the ground. Ripping the grass, the ground shuddered at her touch. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I spent years doing this. 86 years of Grandma's mess to clear up. Research, travel, ritual prep, the lot, dot, dot. At first I thought I could fit it around. My job as a trainee solicitor, weekdays drafting briefs for barristers, weekends nipping down to the local creme to knock out a few apology ceremonies. No problem, except no part of the ritual can happen in daylight, and Grandma's atrocious record-keeping made everything 10 times worse. At that pace, I was going to die of old age before the list was done. Next thing you know, I've accidentally P.U.T. one of Grandma's victims' names in a prosecution for grievous bodily harm, and found myself Googling how to break into crematoriums in Cockfosters. Employment and soul-saving were not compatible. Benefits were only ever going to be a stopgap while I worked my new full-time job, fixing the afterlife. Try explaining to the job center that you can't look for work because you recurrently catfishing a stranger to find out where they scattered their husband's ashes, dot, dot. Saving souls is filthy work. The last few years had been the worst of it. As well, I knocked out all the easy ones as quick as I could. Then came the hard cases, the people no one was connected to, the ones missing from every public register, the ones whose families couldn't or wouldn't talk, or the ones from long ago when keeping the poor on file was a nice to have. Who recorded those for me, I'd never know. I'd been everywhere from John O'Groats to Land's End, from Killybegs to Grimsby. I'd had to use subterfuge, manipulation, and had literally run from the law. I was exhausted. I never wanted to write another poem, never wanted to draw another vial of blood, never wanted to speak to another local authority, archivist, never wanted to think about souls or gravestones or demons ever again. I just wanted to lie in bed and watch sloth sanctuary videos until the end of time, dot, dot, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I never learned not to be terrified when the people clawed their way from the grave. There was no relief as I watched Elizabeth's spindly fingers push through the soil, twitching like time-lapse mushrooms, then curling over to grip the grass. Terrified, not least because this one apparently was our stash kicking, dot, dot. A second hand followed, clenching the earth. The blades of grass shivered under her chipped nails. Fingertips bent backward as she hauled herself up like someone surfacing from deep water, a guttural rasp spilling from her mouth, contorted as if dragged down at the edges. Eyes rolling, I leapt back, knocking over the vial of blood. Perfect. Her hair was one huge mat, her face sharp angled, frame lithe. She was wearing some kind of martial arts outfit. She roared, lunged, I screamed, scrambled over wet grass, and fled the ritual circle. The glow vanished, and Elizabeth Collop set into snorting laughter. She straightened, brushed the mat from her hair, and looked around as if checking her stop. "Where the hell is this?" she asked. "That's a good question." I was amplified by terror and outrage. She shrugged. "Well, it's better than the last place. Nice to be free. Well, see ya." She waved and attempted to wander off. You can't leave," I said. "You're bound to me. I have to free you to your eternal rest. Can't you just free me to my parents' house?" she asked. Normally they came out so thankful to be freed from whatever stasis they'd been in. They were pleading for the great beyond, desperate to be dissolved. I don't have any other options, I said, me, and full of the outfit. Sorry, it's eternal peace or back there. I nodded towards the ground. The ritual would need restarting. I could manage it, though. There was still a drop of blood in the vial, and I had a pocket full of hankies to burn. This wasn't my first rodeo. I felt around for the paintbrush. No way, yelled Elizabeth. I haven't even watched Season 7 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Really? I asked, raising an eyebrow. I think the reviews were middling. Nitrogen monoxide spoilers, she yelled. It was just about to come out. Then that old bat came in. Less of the old bat, I said. Grandma was demonic. Grandma, wait. She kicked a paintbrush clean out of my hand. PL. Keys, I begged, trying to force the ritual back to life through sheer panic. The grass convulsed again. The light flickered. You've got to go. You don't understand. No, she said, blinked, and like someone yanking a plug from a socket, everything shut down. Absolutely not. How did you do that? I asked, feeling hope drain from my body. You done. Think they teach mental discipline in Aikido. You're not as strong as Grandma, you know. Maybe, I sniffed, but I'm resilient. I began to cry, the baby slow. TH went up in smoke. Look, she said, you can free me, I'm sure, just instead of sending me to the beyond, you can send me back to life. I don't know how, I blobbed. You've dug me out. The grave, she said cheerfully, I believe in you. She bundled the ritual supplies into the picnic blanket, stuffed it into my arms, and started steering me toward the gate. Guess we're stuck with each other now. She said, you research resurrection. I'll get settled with Season 7. Buffy, have you seen the others? I shook my head, sniffling. What have you been doing? She exclaimed. Cancel all your plans. We'll start at Season 1. As we walked out of the graveyard, I thought, you've won the battle, Elizabeth. But I'll win the war, ... Still, I felt her hand on me, gently but firmly pushing me forward. I'd better watch my back, otherwise she really would kick my arse. Story 2. The Haunting of Rose Cottage. Lionel paced the hallway, as he had been for the past half hour, muttering and glaring at the walls as though he could shame them into behaving. Where is that blasted knocking coming from? It had started again about midnight, a steady, maddening tap, 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 as if someone were delightfully but insistently rapping from inside the plaster. He had checked all the doors, all the windows, the cupboards, the airing closet, even the old laundry chute Hazel had always said was haunted in a charming, historical way, but nothing, just the same narrow, familiar hallway of the small cottage he and Hazel had bought for their quiet retirement. Quiet, ... Well, it had been quiet until she died 6 months ago. Since then, the house felt cavernous, a place with too many soundless corners and too much absence. Lionel rubbed a hand over his face and shivered. Where had the heat gone? It was the height of summer, yet a faint chill threaded the air. He tugged his dressing gown tighter around himself and shuffled back to the bedroom. The bed loomed wide and uneven, his side rumpled, Hazel's smooth and untouched. He eased into the left side, his hand drifting automatically to the hollow dip on her pillow. A soft stroke, a quiet apology. Night, love, he whispered into the dark. The knocking faded. For a moment he almost believed sleep would come. He woke up with a jolt. The knocking was thunderous now, loud enough to rattle his teeth. "Oh, postman," he mumbled, relief flooding him. He scrambled for his slippers, nearly tripping over them, and shuffled down the hall, calling, "Coming, I'm coming. Hold your horses." The postman greeted him cheerfully with a parcel and a stack of letters, flyers, and coupon booklets, useless fodder for the wreck. Wycling bin, waste of a good tree. Lionel grumbled under his breath as he shut the door. He dumped the pile on the kitchen table and went to start the coffee machine. His fridge offered a bleak landscape. One shriveled tomato, a questionable piece of cheese, and milk that was technically still in date if you squinted. "Mostly it is," he sighed. He sat with his bow W and opened the day's paper, the usual doom, gloom, politicians saying daft things, and a cat who'd learned to play the piano. He rolled his eyes and flipped the page. Then a movement at the edge of his vision. The kitchen door shifted. He froze, watched, waited. Nothing. He shook his head. "Just a breeze," he muttered. Though the windows were all shut, he turned another page, and the kitchen door slammed so hard he nearly fell off his chair. He shot to his feet, heart thundering, staring at the door as though it might throw itself open again. The silence that followed was a sob, and all of its own, thick enough to hear his own pulse. "Ridiculous," he whispered, "just a draft or an animal." Though what animal shut a door with the force of a teenager in a mood he could not say. He cleared his breakfast, humming to himself to smooth the tremor in his hands. He tried to ignore the gnawing sense that something had changed in the house, something subtle, something watching that evening while eating his microwaved meal, something allegedly beef, swimming in gravy. Lionel tried to lose himself in the sitcom on TV. The canned laughter bounced around the room, filling the quiet Hazel used to occupy with chuckles and little comments like, "Oh, you do that exact thing, Lionel." He smiled at the memoir. "Why?" Until a movement caught his eye, a shadow, long, dark, darting across the doorway like a streak of ink. It slipped down the hall toward the bedroom. Lionel's bowl clattered onto the tray. He was up in an instant, chasing the blur with a mix of fear and indignation. "If that's a robber, I'll give you what for." He barked, though what he thought he'd octo. A lie-do was questionable. He reached the bedroom doorway and stopped dead. The room was empty. Utterly still. He checked the wardrobe. Nothing. The window closed, latched, untouched. He knelt and peered under the bed. Dust, slippers, no intruders. What on earth? He breathed. Something brushed the back of his neck, a gentle skim of cold air, like a fingertip. He spun, heart seizing. Nobody there. That night was the first time he heard it. Lionel, a whisper, soft, barely a breath. He sat bolt upright in the darkness. "Hazel?" Silence. He reached for the lamp, but his hand shook so badly he knocked it off the bedside table. The bulb flickered on the floor. In the dim half-light he saw movement, a ripple in the corner of the room like heat, distortion. "Hazel, is that you, love?" His voice wobbled. Are you trying to talk to me?" The ripple stilled, and then Lionel, this time it was unmistakable. Her voice, her exact voice, the tone she used when she couldn't find her glasses or wanted him to make a cup of tea. His throat tightened with hope. "Hazel, sweetheart, I am here Tears pricked his eyes. It's me, I'm here. A beat of silence, a breath. Then the whisper again, but colder, wronged somehow, Lionel. He reached out into the air, and something icy grazed his fingertips. He gasped and snatched his hand back. Over the next few days, small things shifted around the house. Hazel's favorite mug, the one with the cartoon chickens, kept appearing on the kitchen counter no matter where Lionel put it. The hallway light turned on by itself. Her perfume, lavender and vanilla, wafted through the house in brief, heartbreaking traces. He caught glimpses of someone in his periphery, a silhouette standing in doorways, vanishing when he turned. He began talking to her. Hazel, is that you? Are you trying to reach me? Love, do you need something, a message? Sometimes the air grew warmer when he spoke, sometimes colder. Once, while dusting her side of the bed, he felt something tug the hem of his dressing gown, a small, light, almost affectionate gesture. He choked back a sob. "Oh, Hazel," he whispered. The knocking started but changed. It no longer came from the walls. It came from the ceiling, then the floor, then the inside of the wardrobe. Night after night, he lay awake, staring into the dark, while something knocked steadily from somewhere in the house. At times, it was like tapping, then like scratching, and sometimes like a fist pounding in rage. "Hazel," he called, trembling. "What's wrong? Tell me what's wrong." But the whispers changed, too. They grew sharper, angrier. Once, as he drifted on the edge of sleep, a hiss slithered into his ear. "Lionel," the voice stretched, warped, bending his name into something unrecognizable. He gasped awake, and something unseen dragged the blanket violently off his body. It happened again 2 nights later. An icy hand clamping around his ankle jolted Lionel awake before he could scream. It yanked him off the bed so hard he hit the floor with a thud that rattled his teeth. "Stop, Hess, top IT," he shouted, clawing at the carpet. The force dragged him halfway across the room before abruptly releasing him. He scrambled backward into the corner, chest heaving, staring at the empty space where something had pulled him with the strength of a grown man. "Hazel," he whispered. "Love, please don't do this." The silence that followed was so thick and hostile it seemed to press on his ears. The next morning, he found the kitchen in chaos. Every cupboard stood flung open, every drawer yanked out, all the chairs lay tipped over, one broken clean in half. Hazel's chicken mug sat in the middle of the table, cracked. He touched it with shaking fingers and whispered, Why are you so angry?" No reply came. But a cupboard door behind him slammed shut with such violence it splintered the wood. Lionel fled the room. He barely slept any more, but on that final night, exhaustion dragged him under. He awoke to an unnatural silence, a silence so deep it rang in his ears. Then the bed beneath him began to vibrate. A soft hum at first, then a tremble, then There was a violent shake. "No," he whimpered. "Please, no." The blanket lifted into the air, then his legs, then his whole body. He floated above the bed, weightless and rigid, held by invisible hands. He screamed. The house groaned. The wardrobe doors banged open and shut. Pictures fell from the walls. The lamp burst into sparks. He hung there suspended, helpless, tears streaming down his face as he cried Hazel's name. The voice whispered in his ear, cold, venomous, mocking, Liu Neal. And then it dropped. He hit the mattress hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs. But he didn't wait. Oh, no. Lionel was already scrambling, half sobbing, half panting, for his dressing gown. He snatched it off the floor and bolted from the bedroom. He didn't look back, not once. He sprinted through the hallway, down the stairs, out the front door, barefoot and wild-eyed, into the early morning light. He didn't leave Rose Cottage gracefully, but he ran straight to his son's house. His son took him to see the doctor that same morning. Neighbors whispered about how pale he looked, how he flinched when someone closed a door too hard. Doctors checked him, declared him unsettled but physically sound, and urged him to rest. His son arranged a modern flat for him by the river, somewhere bright, somewhere safe. Safe, he told himself that word every night like a prayer, but the cottage did not entirely let him go. At first, it was nothing more than the nagging feeling of being watched, then some nights the faintest tap from behind the walls, so soft he could pretend it was the boiler settling. And once, when he opened his kitchen cupboard, Hazel's chicken mug was sitting there, though he could have sworn he hadn't unpacked it in years. He tried not to think about the cottage, tried not to remember the whispers that sounded like her voice, tried not to wonder what else might have been imitating it. For 15 more years, until 85, he lived with the quiet dread that something had followed him, not constantly, not violently, but in pulses, like distant thunder reminding him the storm had never fully passed. Sometimes he felt Hazel near him, warm and familiar, the way love lingers in a room long after laughter fades. Other times he felt something colder, something that hovered just outside the corner of his vision, retreating whenever he turned. He began to wonder whether Hazel had been reaching for him, or trying to warn him. Near the end, weakened and tired, he often asked the empty room softly, "Was it you I ran from, Hazel, or something else?" The silence never answered. When he finally slipped away, one quiet spring afternoon with sunlight spilling across his feet, there was no terror, only release, like loosening a tightly knotted rope. As he rose, weightless, the world fanned out beneath him, the river, the hills, the neat rows of the new-built estate where he'd spent his final years, and far beyond that, tucked at the village's edge, was Rose Cottage. He expected it to look smaller with distance, but it didn't. A heavy shadow blanketed the rooftop, all dark and pulsing faintly, as though alive, clung to beams pooled in the chimney, seeped between every stone. Something twisted inside it, as if the shape struggled within the same mass, merging, pulling, tearing. One of those shapes was Hazel's. She surfaced from the dark for a moment, her face strained, flickering, reaching. Before Lionel could cry out, another force swept toward him. Warm, soft, familiar. Hazel, whole and shadowed, appeared at his side, her hand slipping into his with the certainty of 40 years. "Come away, love," she whispered. "Don't look at that. It isn't me." But the shape on the cottage roof writhed, and for one awful heartbeat, it whispered his name exactly as it had in the bedroom that night. Lionel. Hazel held him tighter. "Let it stay where it is," she said gently. "Some things don't follow us. Some things stay trapped." He looked at her, at the light in her eyes, her real eyes, then down at the cottage one last time, and he realized the truth. There had never been one hunting at Rose Cottage. There had been two. Hazel's hand warmed his. He turned from the cottage, from the shadow, from the thing that had worn her voice. He did not look back again. Story 3. The days I never lived, the sunlight on her skin smelled like crushed pears. That's the last thing I can remember about the day I stopped being a man. ND tonight, on the one night the dead are permitted to remember, they say the sun will return just for me. I press my palm against the broken conservatory glass. The shards catch moonlight, fracturing it into pieces that look almost warm, almost. Outside, the town of Bresa celebrates Halloween with American fervor they learned from television. Plastic jack-o'-lanterns glow in windows. Child wren dressed as monsters parade through streets that once ran with real blood. They don't know that history walks among them. 500 years. That's how long I've carried this anger, not for blood, never for blood. The stories got that wrong. I hunger for something simpler, something every living creature takes for granted until it's gone. The weight of sunlight on closed eyelids, the way morning air tastes different from night, the particular exhaustion that comes from a day spent under an open sky. You're early, Magda says from the doorway. I don. Turn. She knows I don't like being watched when I'm like this, raw with wanting. She's worked for me 3 years now, this astrophysicist with her sharp mind and careful distance. She thinks she understands what I am. She's wrong, but her misconceptions serve my purposes. The equipment is ready, I ask. Yes, her footsteps echo on the conservatory's stone floor, glass crunches. Beneath her boots, 8 minutes of synthesized solar radiation, calibrated to match the spectrum of a summer noon. The eclipse will mask any atmospheric interference. 8 minutes after 5 centuries, lines have 8 minutes. My wife grew sunflowers here once before the Ottoman siege, before the choices that carved me into something else. She'd stand among them at dawn, her dark hair catching light like water, and tell me I spent too much time in shadow. You never choose light over your own darkness, Vlad, she'd say, laughing, as if it were a simple preference, as if I could just step into brightness whenever I wished. The irony burns worse than any imagined flame. You understand the risks, Magda continues. Her voice carries that clinical detachment scientists mistake for objectivity. If the stories about your condition are true, even synthetic sunlight could destroy me. I finish the thought. She won't, yes. But what if it doesn't? What if I stand in that light and remain whole? Then I'll know, finally. I'll know whether I'm damned or just afraid. Whether the prison I've lived in for half a millennium has bars or just shadows. I've been too terrified to test. The church bells strike midnight. Halloween begins in earnest, the night when boundaries blur, when the impossible creeps closer to real. Shall we begin? Magda asks. We descend into the castle's lower chambers, where Magda has assembled her machinery. Copper coils spiral around glass tubes. Mirrors angle from scaffolding she's erected over weeks of preparation. The whole apparatus looks less like science and more like an altar to some forgotten god of light. Stand here, she instructs, pointing to a circle marked in chalk on the floor. I obey, Saint. Range, how easily I follow her commands. 5 centuries of giving orders, and now I wait like a child for permission to step into artificial day. She adjusts dials, checks readings on instruments I don't understand. Her movements are precise, but something else lurks beneath: hesitation, fear. When she glances at me, her expression shifts quickly to read. "Tell me about the last sunrise, you ask." "Ah," she says suddenly. The question catches me unprepared. "Why calibration? I need to know what you're expecting, what you remember." What do I remember? Fragments mostly. The way morning birds sounded, different from night birds. How shadows shortened as the sun climbed. My son's face when he'd wake, squinting and grumbling about the brightness. My wife setting bread to rise by the asked window, timing it by the light's progression across the floor. I remember it was ordinary. I tell her, "That's what haunts me most. I didn't know it would be my last, so I didn't really look." Magda's fingers pause on the controls. That's how most losses work. We never see the last time coming. She speaks like someone who knows. I want to ask what she's lost. What final moment she failed to memorize, but the machine begins to hum, a low vibration that sets my teeth on edge. 2 minutes until the eclipse reaches totality, she announces. Once I activate the array, you'll have exactly 8 minutes before the power cells drain. 8 minutes of manufactured noon. My hands shake. After so long, fear and hope feel identical. What if you're wrong about me, I ask? What if I'm exactly what the stories claim? What if this burns me to ash? She meets my eyes then, really looks at me for the first time tonight. Then at least you lines know. Isn't that better than wondering? Yes, God help me, yes. The humming grows louder. The mirrors begin to glow with stored energy, phosphorescent and strange. Outside, the Halloween revelers have gone quiet, perhaps watching the moon devour itself, or perhaps they sense what's about to happen here, in this broken castle where history refuses to die properly. 30 seconds. Magda whispers. I close my eyes and think of pairs of sunflowers, of my wife's hand reaching for me through morning light I can no longer touch. Now the world explodes into brightness. It doesn't burn. That's the worst part. It doesn't burn. The light pours over me like water, like memory, like every dawn I thought I'd lost. My skin remains whole. No smoke, no agony. Just warmth, spreading across my face, my arms, seeping into places that have been cold so long I'd forgotten they could feel anything else. I open my eyes. The artificial sun blazes above me, contained in Magda's geometric arrangement of mirrors and tubes. It's nothing like real sunlight, to white, to steady, lacking the subtle variations of natural day. But my body doesn't care about authenticity. Every cell remembers what it means to be touched by light. I laugh. The sound erupts from somewhere deep, rusty with disuse. When did I last laugh? Not the bitter chuckle I've perfected over centuries, but this wild, uncontrolled thing that shakes my whole frame. It's working, Magda says quietly. She stands at her controls, watching me with an expression I can't decode. How does it feel? How does it feel? Like drowning in reverse. Like every morning I missed rushing back at once. I spread my arms wide, letting the light reach everywhere. My shadow pools beneath me, solid and real and mine. I had a shadow, I whisper. All this time I could have had a shadow. The laughter turns to something else, Tears, they stream down my face, and I dawn. T bother to hide them, 500 years of nights of hiding, of convincing myself the sun would kill me. 500 years of nothing but darkness and the stories people told about monsters. What if I could have walked in daylight this whole time? What if the cage was never locked for minutes remaining? Magda announces. I drop to my knees on the chalk circle. The stone floor feels different in light, more solid somehow. Everything feels more solid, more real, as if I've been living in some half-state between dream and waking. And only now am I fully present. My wife was right, I say, though I'm not really talking. To Magda, I chose the shadows. Every time I chose them. Magda steps closer, leaving her equipment. She kneels beside me, just outside the circle of light. Her face carries sympathy, but something else too. Knowledge, certainty. Vlad, she says softly, there's something you need to understand. 3 minutes. As I remind her, whatever you have to say can wait 3 minutes. But she shakes her head. No, it can't. The light flickers just for an instant, a hiccup in the power flow. In that split second of darkness, I see her clearly, really see her, and I understand that everything I thought I knew is wrong. Because you were never a vampire, Vlad. Magda's words fall like tones into still water. And you already died once. I stare at her. The light continues to blaze around me. But suddenly it feels less like salvation and more like an interrogation lamp. What? The real Vlad Gepek died in 1476. You're just the guilt that stayed behind. My mouth opens, closes. The warmth on my skin turns cold despite the artificial sun still shining. That's not. I remember the siege, the chores, drinking from the cup that changed me. You remember what you needed to remember. She pulls something from her pocket. A hospital badge with her photo. Dr. Magda Voy, Kulescu Neuropsychiatric Unit. This isn't a castle. It's the ruins of the old Bresa Psychiatric Hospital. Abandoned since the earthquake in 97. No, but even as I deny it, details shift into focus. The scaffolding isn't copper and glass. It's medical equipment. Old UV therapy lamps from the hospital's abandoned treatment rooms. The chalk circle is just chalk. The conservatory's broken glass comes from windows shattered by time and vandals, not Ottoman cannons. Your name is Radu Florescu. She continues, voice gentle but relentless. You were a medieval hist or a professor at the university. Obsessed with Wallachian history. With your ancestry, you claimed descent from the Draculefti line. Stop. 3 years ago, there was a fire. Our apartment building in Bucharest. You tried to save your family, your wife, your son, but the smoke was too thick, and you chose wrong. You went left when you should have gone right. You saved yourself instead of them. The light above us gutters. 1 minute remaining, maybe less. You created this whole myth because you couldn't live with what you'd done, Magda says. So you found history's darkest shadow and crawled inside it. If you were a monster, then the guilt made sense. If you were cursed, then the loss was inevitable. I want to argue. Want to point to my memories, my century of darkness, but they're already fading. Cheap theater, backdrops falling away. The castle becomes a hospital. The mirrors become medical equipment, and I become just a man, kneeling in an abandoned building, crying under ultraviolet lamps. while a patient doctor tries to lead me back to sanity. 10 seconds, she says, the lights die. Real dawn creeps through the broken windows. Actual sunlight, weak and gray through October clouds, touches my skin. Nothing happens. I stand there, palms open, waiting for flames that will never come. The sun rises over the Carpathian peaks, indifferent to my mythology. Birds sing the distant sound of morning. Traffic drifts from the city below. I'm not him, I whisper. No, Magda agrees, you're not. But I smile anyway, not because I'm cured, not because the truth feels better than the fiction, but because for 8 minutes I felt sunlight. Real or imagined, earned or stolen, those 8 minutes belonged to me. Maybe I was never a vampire at all, but God help me, it was easier being one. Story 4. Embrullada. Whetstone Gazette, November 1st, 2025. A 25-year-old woman was struck and killed in a hit-and-run collision late Tuesday near East Cypress Road, according to the Whetstone Police Department. Valentina Rodriguez was found by a passerby in a roadside drainage ditch and was pronounced dead at the scene. The alleged driver, 22-year-old Bryce Callaway, son of Congressman Jonathan Callaway, was located at the congressman's residence early Wednesday morning and taken in for questioning. Authorities say excessive speed and alcohol may have been contributing factors, though the investigation remains ongoing. Ms. Rodriguez, a housekeeper, leaves behind her 1-year-old daughter, her brother, and her mother. The Whetstone courtroom hadn't been this packed. Since hangings were still legal, Bryce Callaway slumped in his chair next to S.E. Smith, his father's attorney, fixer, and all-purpose cis janitor. Bryce sat quietly, doodling on his notepad like a bored kid in detention. Behind him sat his parents, Congressman Jonathan Callaway and his impeccably composed wife. The air around them was thick with confidence and privilege, the kind that came from knowing exactly how the sentence would fall. On the opposite side of the courtroom, behind the prosecution table, sat Valentina Rodriguez's family. Her brother sat rigid, fists knotted. Her mother clutched the 1-year-old baby to her chest, rocking absently as if motion alone could keep the world from collapsing. For the last hour, the prosecutor, Aaron Stevens, young, soft-spoken, and visibly intimidated, barely looked at the Rodriguez family at all. She kept her eyes on her papers, on the judge, anywhere except the people, he who had lost the most, and she made no effort to explain that the original charges, vehicular manslaughter and failure to remain at the scene, had already been quietly pled down. The judge, a weathered old man from a bygone generation who had sat on the bench longer than most people in the room had been alive, cleared his throat as everyone rose. Bryce stood with his fixer, disinterested. He glanced back at his father with the same blaze gaze he'd given to everyone else. Mr. Callaway, the judge began, I see Ms. Stevens and Mr. Smith have reached a plea agreement. It appears you are pleading guilty to careless driving resulting in death and failure to report an accident. Is this correct? S.E. Smith nudged Bryce like a mother elbowing her son in church during the homily. Yes, another nudge. Yes, Your Honor. I see. Taking into account the letters submitted by your father and other notable members of the community, your recent graduation from Harvard's business school, and your otherwise clean record, I see no reason to impose a sentence requiring you to serve time in a penitentiary that could cloud an otherwise bright future. But I want you to hear me, son. I suggest you take this opportunity to think about your future. The judge adjusted his glasses. In accordance with the state's recommendations, I hereby impose a fine of $10,000 and 200 hours of community service. Ms. Stevens will go over your next steps with you after adjournment. You are free to go, sir. Valentina's mother slopped forward as the gavel fell, as if the sound itself had struck her. She clutched the baby to her chest, and a low, broken moan slipped out of her quiet, but unbearable. Years later, people who had been in that courtroom would still talk about that moment. Fists pressed into his knees, staring at nothing. Bryce shook his lawyer's hand, hugged his mother, shook his father's hand. Then he Washington looked toward the exit and stopped in front of the Rodriguez family, what was left of it. His attorney's hand settled on his shoulder, a gentle push to keep moving. Bryce didn't. He nodded toward the baby in Valentina's mother's arms. She's cute, he said. Valentina's brother didn't look at him. His eyes stayed fixed forward, drilling a hole into the wood paneling. Something in his face had gone very, very still. The main doors leading outside shut quietly behind Bryce, like they were keeping secrets. He bounded down the courthouse steps like a bully stomping ants. When he reached the bottom, he froze at the sound of screeching tires. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. It was the turn signal clicking relentlessly that brought Bryce around. His head throbbed. He winced when his fingers brushed the bloody gash over his right eyebrow. Pieces came back to him: the party, the fight over his keys, music, his phone ringing. He picked it up, swerved, a horn blared, the tires screamed, then the crash swallowed the world. He hit something, a car, maybe. The Lexus door groaned when he shoved it open. The cold night air punched him awake. He braced himself on the searing hot hood engine, hissing, turn signal ticking like a metronome. 20 yards away, a beat-up hatchback sat crooked in the ditch. Bryce staggered toward it, muscles still numb from shock. He stopped dead. Oh, fuck. A young woman lay in the drainage ditch, twisted unnaturally, as if her bones had been dropped inside her wrong. One arm bent sideways, bone jutting through torn skin. Her legs were a tangle he couldn't make sense of. A dark flower, almost black, spread across her white blouse, growing bigger with each shallow breath. Her chest heaved, losing the fight. Oh, fuck. Her eyes found him, not pleading, not scared. Focused, blood seeped from the corners of her mouth like tears. She made a wet, choking gurgle, the same sound the buck he'd shot in. The throat last season made when it tried to breathe. Bring, she gasped. Bryce couldn't look away, though every part of him wanted to. Bring me my. Her chest rose and fell like a raft in a violent sea. Blood trickled from her ear into the rest of the dark pooling beneath her. Baby, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Bryce jerked hard, the memory swallowing itself. His wheeze, iron swam, his breath hurried and shallow. He blinked slowly and turned toward the street. The drivers had gotten out of their cars and were screaming at each other, waving their arms, faces red and furious, their tires still hissing from the sudden stop. The sound of yelling hit him like a slap. He headed toward the parking garage, trying to remember which level he'd parked his new Lexus on. Bryce was doing. A lot of thinking about everything except Valentina, his future, for instance. Just like the judge said. He didn't think about her while weaving through traffic on the 10. He didn't. He think about her at the red light when a couple pushed a stroller across the crosswalk. Not even when he passed the billboard begging drivers not to drink and drive. Bryce took the exit tour downtown. He loved downtown. In the afternoons, he cruised slowly past the window of his gym to see which girls were in there. His phone buzzed a text, "See you at OCS." Smirking, he flicked on the radio. Lady Gaga blasted through the speakers. Bryce tapped the steering wheel with his thumb when the music smeared suddenly into static cloud, sharp and overwhelming. He frowned and reached for the dial. The static warped into something else. Gurgling, breathing, a cold pressure tightened around his chest. Bryce tried to inhale, but his body seized up, leaving his arms suspended halfway to the console. "Bring me my..." He forced his eyes upward toward the rearview mirror. She was in the back, twisted, mutilated. Bent Inway's bones weren't meant to bend like plastic dolls melting on a stovetop. Sparse auburn hairs poked through the dark, matted blood coating her head. Her skin was colorless. Her eyes were porcelain black, dotted with tiny, glittering shards of glass sea. Huts webbed across her cheeks, still bleeding. Her mouth pulled into a tight, wet O. Blood bubbled over her lips. "Baby." Bryce immediately looked back at the road and forced a haughty, nervous laugh. "Jesus. What is that, man? Get it together." He checked the rear view again. Only the leather interior looked back. His fingers loosened from their knuckle-white grip on the wheel. A few slow blinks, a long breath, and he blasted the radio again. By the time he parked at OCS, he felt like himself again, primal, unchecked. He fixed his hair in the mirror, not even glancing toward the back seat. Shouts of feigned congratulations and empty welcomes filled the pub as he jubilantly entered. Let the celebrations begin. After his first beer, he asked a couple people for Coke. The conversations were recycled and banal. "Lucky dog. What are you gonna do now? Hey, can you get me a meeting with your father? I've got some opportunities he'd be very interested in." "Oh, honey, I'm so glad you're okay. I'd take me and my girls to the casino tonight. I bet they comp your room, don't they? Could be useful." Bryce wasn't counting his beers. That would be insulting to the dopamine. He sipped, danced crudely, sipped bigger, danced cruder. If it hadn't drowned out the music, he would have missed it completely. Gurgling, "Bring me my baby." His stomach dropped, cement filling it. Then his limbs with terror, he scoured the sticky room filled with sycophants. Tried to keep it casual as he asked the girl next to him. He had no idea who she was. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what, sweetie?" She knew him or of him. "Nothing." He kept looking anyway. She stroked his hand expertly, like a girl who always knows her priorities. His posture loosened, but his eyes stayed moving, scanning. "Sweetie?" She put 2 fingers under his chin and drew his attention down to her. "Get us a couple shots, okay?" She pouted her silicone lips. "And you can tell me all about it." Bryce nodded with a smirk and staggered to the bar. He climbed onto a stool, nearly missing tea. 3 shots of patron. Guy. He lifted 3 fingers like a marionette mid-performance. The bartender nodded, disappeared. and reappeared with 3 clear shots, lime wedges straddling the rims. Tab. Bryce barked. Another nod. Another disappearance. Bryce exhaled sharply, grabbed 1 shot, and threw it back, ignoring the lime. He slammed the empty upside down on the bar, smashing the lime. Beneath it, juice smeared across the wood. He grabbed the 2 remaining shots, preparing to bring them back, and his gaze lifted to the massive bar-to ceiling mirror behind the bottles. Everything inside him froze. Every bone, every muscle, every instinct, even the breath halfway in his chest. She was standing right behind him, slightly off to the side, like someone waiting patiently for him to get up and leave with her. Her once white blouse was nearly black with gore. Her hair, clumped and matted, matched it. Blood streamed from her porcelain black eyes, converging with the dark red lacerations striping her face. Her hands rose, fingernails caked with glass and dirt. They were about to touch his shoulders when Bryce finally found his voice and screamed, a sound he didn't know he could make, tore out of him, raw and animal, and she was gone. The shot slipped from his hands and hit the bar, one rolling off and clattering to the FLOR. The pub went still. People stared, whispered. The jukebox thumped on. Oblivious, Bryce straightened as best he could and lurched toward the door, shoving it open with his shoulder, mumbling T.O. himself as he fled into the night. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next morning, his mouth felt full of dust and his head packed with splinters. His condo was empty except for the ceiling fan lazily pushing stale air across the bedroom. A hollow ache radiated through his stomach and into every limb. A long, hot shower would fix it, reset him. He stepped into the spacious bathroom and caught his reflection. A stranger stared back. He reached for the Bluetooth speaker out of habit, then froze. He pulled his hand away. Silence felt safer. He undressed, leaving clothes scattered across the tile. Muttering to himself between dry swallows, he cranked the heat, shut the glass shower door, and stepped under the stream. Water poured down his back and chest. His bangs hung in front of his eyes like a soaked sheepdog. Steam swallowed the room, fogging the glass door into a milky blur. He let the sound of water hitting tile steady him. The radio crackled on. Music cloud bright blared through the bathroom. Bryce's throat tightened. The stations flicked rapidly, voices, drums, snippets, before slamming into deafening static. No, and oh no, no. Bryce whispered, not again. Please, not again. The static thickened, corrupted, becoming wet, gurgling, choking breaths, the same ragged sound he heard in the ditch. He sobbed once, sharp, involuntary. Then he heard it, the bathroom door. The locked door creaked open. Bryce's eyes widened. His whole body froze. He stared at the fogged glass, wanting to wipe it clean, but unable. To move. A shadow slipped inside. The silhouette bent wrong, moving wrong, a form that defied the natural shape of things. The static roared. A voice leaked through it, wet and broken. Braying, the shadow grew larger, approaching the shower. Me? Bryce pressed back against the cold tile, trembling. My hand black through the fog lifted toward the shower door. Baby, what? Bryce screamed, voice cracking into a sob. What do you want from me? The static collapsed into silence. Then the music snapped back on, cheerful and horribly. Normal. Bryce forced his eyes open. The cold air had cleared the fog from the glass. He pulled the door open with shaking hands. The bathroom door was still locked. The radio was off. No footprints, no shadow, no movement. He slid to the shower floor, water pouring over him, and cried quietly into his hands. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The Rodriguez house was modest, with high grass pushing up there. Oh, the cracks in the sidewalk and driveway. Not the safest. Neighborhood, not the worst. At 3 a.m., almost everyone was asleep. Almost. Bryce Calloway paced back and forth in the street out front. Itty, exhausted, he drifted in and out of the street light's glow, muttering to himself, "She wants the baby. She won't stop. She wants me to bring her the baby." He froze. The porch light clicked off. A minute later, the last light in the house followed. Bryce stepped back into the darkness and licked his lips, thinking, how long should he wait? How long until they were asleep? After several tense minutes, he eased open a window on the side of the house. It groaned, but not loudly enough to stir anyone. Once inside, he shut it softly. He planned to leave by the front door. He stepped carefully down the hall, past framed photos of a young Valentina, her mother, her brother, a man who could have been her father, another of Valentina holding her newborn Otter helping her walk, bathing her in the kitchen sink. The first door on the right was cracked open. A faint light and the buzz of a fan spilled into the hall. Bryce peeked in. Valentina's mother slept in the bed, facing the wall. He pushed the door open. It creaked barely, but he stopped cold. Nothing stirred. He crept inside and approached the crib. He looked at Valentina's mother still asleep, then down at the baby girl, pacifier half out of her mouth, just rising and falling in tiny peaceful motions. He hunched over the crib rail and slid his fingers gently beneath her. Cold metal pressed into the back of his skull. He froze. A man's breath filled the room. Then a voice turned around slowly. Bryce obeyed. He recognized the man immediately, even in the dark. Vicente Rodriguez, Valentina's brother. Bryce didn't know his name, never bothered to. Vicente shoved the pistol harder into Bryce's forehead, pinning him against the crib. "What the fuck are you doing here?" Valentina's mother jolted awake. She took in the scene silently, then hurried to the crib, grabbed the baby, and backed away. She never took her eyes off Bryce. Bryce's thoughts spun out. He tried to speak past a trembling jaw. "Her baby. She won't stop. I have to bring her the baby, please. She won't stop." He looked up and for a moment he felt relief, because Vicente's eyes were full, not with justice, with hate, with grief, with something older and heavier than the law, the kind of desire that had burned a hole through the last of his mercy. Bryce closed his eyes and held his breath. He let it out when he heard the hammer cock back. A whisper followed, soft, deliberate. Bryce had to strain to hear it. "Parati, mi chiquita." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Whetstone Gazette, November 13th, 2025. Authorities continued the search today for 22-year-old Bryce Calloway, son of Congressman Jonathan Calloway. Calloway was last seen leaving O'Shea's pub at 12th and Broadway after what witnesses described as a frantic outburst and erratic behavior. If you or anyone you know has information regarding his whereabouts. Please contact the Whetstone Police Department. Story 5, Scratches. Nora spilled sugar again. A thin rattle of grains scattering across the table was the first thing she heard that morning, her hands trembling too much to control the spoon. Half a teaspoon. She never managed half a teaspoon anymore. She stared at the mess for a moment, left it. No one else came here anymore, and she didn't have the energy to pretend she lived a tidy, functioning life. Jeans, a loose black t-shirt, sneakers, hair hanked into a careless ponytail. No mirror, no bronze point. Her mother used to joke she was shaped like a twig, and Nora had never bothered to argue. If anything, she agreed. She never liked her appearance. Too thin, too flat, too boring, but she didn't care for it much either. She stepped into the hallway and shut the door behind her like she was locking away a version of herself she didn't want anyone to see. Mrs. Adams' office sat on the 8th floor of a concrete giant that loomed over the street. Nora rode the elevator up in silence, watching her reflection flicker in the metal walls washed out, shaking, hollow. The elevator shuddered once. Halfway up, Nora flinched hard, her breath catching as the fluorescent lights flickered overhead. For a split second her mind conjured the image of a long, shadowed hand gripping the top of the elevator car, her knees nearly buckled. When the lights steadied, she felt stupid, embarrassed, but the dread took a few minutes to unclench its grip. The office itself was dim, cramped, and smelled faintly of old paper and lavender air freshener fighting a losing battle. Nora had on. He thought it was the most depressing room she'd ever been in. She still did. Ironic, right? "Good morning, Nora," Mrs. Adams said. Smile polite but thin. It fell the S.E. She got a clear look at her. "Rough night?" she asked, then caught herself and forced her face into neutrality. Nora nodded stiffly. They talked about the weather, about chores, about nothing. Nora wasn't absorbing a single word. Her eyes kept drifting to the window behind Mrs. Adams, the one that reflected only blackness. When the lights hit it wrong, she imagined a face appearing there. Her chest tightened. Mrs. Adams noticed. "Tell me about your sleep," she said gently. Nora took a shaky breath. It came again, a quiet nod. "Permission. Around 1:30, I think. I'd barely fallen asleep when I saw it at the window." Nora's voice wavered. Its eyes were red this time, blood red, just staring at me, and it looked bigger, tall. "Lair?" Its legs were longer. Mrs. Adams kept still, listening. "It crawled up my shirt. I felt its legs on my skin. Then it scratched me, harder than last time, like it wanted to tear me open." Her throat tightened. "When I woke up, there were scratches everywhere and digest." Her voice cracked apart. Mrs. Adams leaned forward and lifted a hand. "Nora, look at me. Breathe slow, in and out. That's it." After a minute, the trembling softened. "Do you want to look at your back again?" she asked. Nora nodded quickly. The mirror stood in the corner. "At all? Dark, waiting?" Nora lifted her shirt. Her gaze fell on her back, and the scratches stared back, red and angry. Her chest tightened, a wave of fear and disbelief flooding her. "Tell me what you see," Mrs. Adams encouraged. "2 long scratches down my spine and 3 smaller ones on the sides. They're fading now, but this morning," she choked, Mrs. Adams whispered her name like a tether. Nora, there is nothing on your back, no scratches, no creature. She paused, her eyes going still almost hesitant. Your mind is replaying trauma. These are hallucinations. You're safe now. There is no point in digging up the past. Do you hear me? Nora swallowed the words without believing them. The session faded into softer topics. By the time Nora left, some color had returned to her cheeks. The trembling remained. Outside, sunlight washed over her, warm and grounding. She chose the long walk home just to feel something real. He dragged her hand along the rough stone of a building as she passed, grounding herself in the texture, the warmth, the way the world didn't vanish when she wasn't looking at it. She was passing the park when she saw a woman sitting on a bench. It took her a moment, 10 years of distance, blurring recognition before it clicked. Cindy, her best friend from high school, stronger looking now, healthier, like she'd grown into her skin. Oh my God, Nora! Cindy stood, disbelief turning instantly into something like worrying. Her gaze flickered to Nora's trembling hands. Why talked briefly, awkwardly. Cindy kept studying her, like she was trying to decode something without scaring her off. When Nora mentioned she lived nearby, Cindy asked if they could catch up properly. Nora hesitated, then nodded. She didn't want to be alone anyway. When they entered the apartment, Nora kicked herself for not cleaning. Please ignore the mess, she moo. TT red ... Cindy didn't answer. Not at first. Nora, her voice was unsure, confused, and a little anxious. Nora turned. Cindy was staring at the shirt draped over the chair, the one Ra had worn last night. Your shirt. Cindy's face went pale. Nora, it's covered in blood. The moment Nora left the building, Mrs. Adams locked her office door and had her back to it, breathing too quickly to be the composed professional Nora knew. The lavender air freshener no longer covered the metallic tang rising from the corner of the room. The faint scent of iron she'd been praying Nora wouldn't notice lingered. Her hands shook as she grabbed the phone. Hello, she whispered. It came back for her again. The marks were fading when she arrived, but she saw them clearly this morning. I don't know how much longer I can convince her they're hallucinations. If she tells someone, a long, irritated sigh pealed through the speaker, then a deep, rasping voice answered. Prepare the altar. A pause. We're sacrificing tonight. Story 6. My friend told me to kill him if he ever knocked on my door. I thought. He was joking at first. We were sitting in my kitchen at 2 a.m., lights off, drinking some coffee, because neither of us could sleep. He kept checking the windows like he expected something to be standing there. If I ever show up at your place unannounced, he said, very calmly, don't open the door. I laughed it off, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. I am serious, he continued. If I knock, if I call, if I text you asking to come in, don't. And if I insist, if I sound desperate, you need to kill me. That's when I stopped smiling and laughing all together. I was confused. Why would my friend that I've known for long tell me this? That's when he told me what happened up north. He'd gone hiking alone deep into a stretch of forest that locals avoided. No trails, no markers, just trees that looked identical no matter how far you walked. On the third day, he realized something was following him, not stalking, but keeping pace. He'd stop, and it would stop. He'd walk, and it would walk. When he finally saw it, it was standing between the trees, half hidden, like it hadn't finished deciding what shape to be. It looked almost human, almost too tall, arms a little too long, head tilted like it was listening for instructions. When it opened its mouth, it spoke in his voice, but it used the wrong words, like it had learned language by watching. Someone mouthed sentences through glass. Help me. I'm lost, my friend ran. That night it stood outside his tent and practiced. He said he could hear it repeating his name over and over, changing the tone each time, calm, panicked, angry, laughing, crying. It never touched the tent. It just learned. By morning, there were two sets of footprints leading away from the campsite. Oh, why one set came back when he finished telling me this. He looked smaller somehow, like something had been hollowed out. It followed me home, he said. Not right away. It waited. That's what they do. I told him he needed sleep. I even asked him if he wanted to go therapy. He grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt. If I come to you, he said, eyes wide, it means it worked. He left before sunrise. 2 days later, he stopped answering his phone. A week later, I got a text from his number. Can I crash at yours tonight? No punctuation, no nickname. He has always used both. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message. Please, man, I really need help. I locked my door. That night, there was a knock. 3 slow taps, familiar rhythm. I didn't move an inch. From the hallway outside my apartment, his voice called out, perfectly steady. I know you're awake. I stayed silent. Something shifted on the other side of the door. A long breath. Then softer. I told you this would happen. The handle turned. It didn't open, but it turned. I didn't sleep at all. This morning, I checked my phone. There was one last text sent at 12 a.m. It's better at being me now. I don't know what to do. Because an hour ago, my neighbor asked why my friend was standing outside my door all night. Said he never moved. Said he just stood there, smiling and waiting. I don't know what's happened to my friend, but that thing, whatever it was, wasn't him. Story 7. The Fletcher property. The year is 1949. Zachary Fletcher walks down a dark, narrow alleyway in Chicago, Illinois, dragging a black trash bag behind him, his newest victim inside. This wasn't his first kill. Fletcher was a serial killer known for keeping trophies and disposing of bodies with chilling precision. He lived in a small house on the city's outskirts. When he was finally caught in June of 1949, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He didn't last long. He was killed in a prison fight soon after. His home was eventually demolished, maybe because no one wanted to buy the house of a convicted serial killer, or maybe because some teenagers burned it down. I don't remember. 5 years later, a skeptical land developer who, like me, didn't believe in ghosts bought the land and built a hotel on it. It's still standing. Today in 2025. Recently, they changed the name of the hotel to the Fletcher Hotel to make money off of the story, which, in my opinion, is just asking for trouble. Ever since we let those YouTubers come in and do some investigating, more and more hauntings have been happening, and people are leaving days before their checkout date out of fear of the ghosts Even employees have left. There was an ad in the window of the hotel, which I used to pass on the way to pick food orders. When I saw the ad, I thought maybe that could be a better job for me than driving arrow and other people's food to their house. You can stay on the property, which would help me save on rent and make my life easier. I would be the only employee working the night shift, and it was basic security. So all I have to do is watch the cameras. Easy peasy. Now that I have been working for the last 3 months, things have been getting worse, with people saying that their items are missing from their rooms, and in place of where their items would be, there are other people's belongings that look old. People also see men in suits walking around outside, smoking cigars, but no any is there. Some even say they smell chemicals in the air, but not cleaning supplies. The problem is that these things keep happening way more than they ever did before, according to old staff and other people. The only thing that I have seen is the cameras going black and static filled. Otherwise, I haven't seen anything, but I have smelled the weird smells in the air. I keep telling myself I don't believe in ghosts. 3 months into working at this hotel, and I haven't seen anything weird on the cameras until today. I'm sitting in the cramped security room, and I see this man who looks like he belongs in the 1950s smoking a cigar in the lobby. So I go and confront the man to tell him he can't smoke inside the building. But when I walk out of the security room, there isn't anyone there, which I think is weird. When I go back to the security room and look at the cameras again, I see the same man sitting on the bench in the lobby smoking. I go and look. No one is there. I'm starting to get a little creeped out. So I start to film the security footage and capture where it looks like a man is sitting on the bench smoking, though he's still no there in person. I go out of the security room to do my hourly walk around the hotel to look for anyone misbehaving, people loitering or trespassing. When I run into a group of YouTubers recording around the hotel, they immediately ask me, "Hey man, have you seen anything weird today?" Usually I just ignore them, but this time, I say, hesitant to respond. "Yes, I have seen something." "Really? Please tell us more. It would be great for the video, if you don't mind." I tell them I recorded the situation after it happened a few times. "Ooh, can we please see the footage?" "Sure, let me look for it," I say as I grab my phone out of my back pocket. "Here," I say as I flip my phone around to show them. I already start regretting my decision to share when they practically snatch my phone away. They don't say much, but their faces do. "Hey, yeah man, that's pretty creepy," one of the guys says. "Hey, do you mind if we use that clip in our video?" He says, "Sure, I guess." I let them record it and say, "Well, I gotta go do my job now. But if you need anything, call the front desk, aka me," I say, hoping they don't call. I then go my separate way. They don't take the hint. "Hey man, do you mind if we record you while you do your thing?" they ask while pointing their camera at me. "Aren't you guys already filming me?" I think the tea's enough for now. "Okay, we'll see you later then." The two talkative people in the group respond, "Please don't." I walk down the hallway to the left and see out of the glass door that there is the same man that I saw earlier on the cameras, sitting outside smoking once again. He's real. I walk towards the door and open it, and the man is still sitting there. he looks at me and says nothing. I say, "Hello, sir, you can't smoke here." But the man doesn't respond. I repeat myself, but still nothing. I walk closer to the man and take the cigar out of his hand, and he just stares at me with a blank look in his eyes. I say, "Hello, sir," I said, "you can't smoke here. Did you not hear me?" "No," the man says with no expression on his face. Who are you?" I stutter a bit from shock when the man responds, "I am Malcolm Gordon Shea," the man says, pausing between each name. I ask no more questions. I say, "Have a smokeless rest of your day," while holding his cigar. When I hear the door open behind me, it's those YouTubers again. I sigh. I turn to look at them. "Were you just talking to someone?" Yes." "Why, who?" "There's nobody there." "What do you mean, he's—" I start to say, as I turn and point at where the man was sitting. But no longer is. Was it a ghost? The most excitable one asks. "No, just some old guy." I wave the cigar at them. "Sure, buddy. Whatever you say." "There ain't nobody there," the group says as they walk by. I finish my walk around the hotel and head back to the security room. I sit down at the desk and type on the computer the names Malcolm Gordon and Shea, along with the name Zachary Fletcher, and hit enter. I am then met with news reports of a Malcolm Gordon Shea's murder on the Fletcher property in the 50s when he was found in hotel room 506, shot and killed in his room. People believe he may haunt this hotel, but he supposedly stays in his room. Okay, well, that's something. I think to myself, I really didn't do much research on this hotel before I took this job. In hindsight, that might have been a mistake. This explains why only me, a janitor, and a bunch of teenagers work here. But still, I didn't really think this place could be so haunted that I could see the ghosts. I kinda just thought that people's stories were being exaggerated or people's minds were playing tricks on them, but now I'm starting to think that might not be the case. After I finish reading the news reports, I switch tabs back to the cameras and get a notification. Movement detect. In the 5th floor hallway. I check the feed, nothing. So I rewind the footage. There he is again, the same man, cigar in hand, walking into room 506. I almost don't believe it. I switch back to the live feed, and he's staring straight into the camera, like he knows I'm watching. Then the screen goes gray and static-filled. I tell myself it's just a glitch, but somehow I know he saw me.